I think that I had always grown up with the conception that the leaders or the successful people in the world fell into kind of a broad vision storytelling category. They were the charismatic leaders. They were the ones setting a vision and coming up with the new ideas. And so I had this thought that those were the skills I needed to develop in order to make an impact on the world. I learned that there was this third category of people that was supposedly helpful. Organization and coordination and spreadsheets and all of that were things that a lot of people didn't know how to do or hated doing, or were even skills that were worthwhile and valuable in the workforce.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Be Unbound podcast. I'm your co-host, David Rethemeyer.
And I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brush.
And Jonathan, today we are going to be starting into quite a few episodes that we have coming up soon of some people who I think qualify as people who would be great fits for our Extraordinary and Ordinary series, but we get the privilege to work with them on a day-to-day basis. And I think this is an excellent individual that we get to start off with.
That's right. Olivia is so much fun to work with. She is a logically minded operations person, and we'll talk about this in the conversation here shortly. She also has a wicked sense of humor and is a ton of fun to be around and a ton of fun to work with. And so it is one of the cool things to work in Unbound, to work with people who not only are really, really good at their job, but are also tremendously fun to be around. And Olivia qualifies on all counts there. And so this is a fun conversation. David, we were traveling recently, and I was out doing some work and observing a live event and just watching all of the different pieces that go into that live event. And of course, I'm seeing it from outside because I'm an attendee at this event. We were set up a booth there and we're doing a little bit of talking and speaking and stuff, but we weren't actually running the event. And when you see it from the outside, you kind of remember how much work it is. And it made me really appreciate Olivia and her team and all the work that they do, how much goes on behind the scenes, because when I experience Unbound live events, they almost always go really smoothly from my end. Behind can be a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff going on, but from the front end, it always looks so smooth, and Olivia's a big part of that. So we don't want you to think that this is about Unbound, where we're using our example here because we know it, because that's what we live. But this is a broader topic about careers in some ways, about work, certainly, about how you deliver value to an employer, and how you serve a company. And all of those things will be part of this conversation. And Olivia is a really great person to talk about this.
And jetpacks.
And jetpacks. Well, it is a pleasure and honor to welcome Olivia Jacks to the Be Unbound podcast. Olivia's got a pretty long resume for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a lot of long years. And so we are privileged to call her not only a colleague and a teammate, but also a friend. And Olivia has done a lot of really cool stuff. But in terms of Unbound, Olivia is the person that keeps David and I showing up in the right places, make sure everything is organized, that our events go off, that our students arrive at the right places. When our students arrive in the wrong places, Olivia untangles that and makes sure they get back to arriving in the correct places. So Olivia is all things logistics and operations. She's also an avid, I might say, voracious reader, which is fun when we have teams that go out. Olivia and I were on a team recently where there were several of us doing a convention up in Pennsylvania. And it was really easy to figure out two things. One, Olivia's going to pick an offbeat but really good restaurant to go to. And so that's great. Those are places I would not normally eat, but I liked it anyhow. Also didn't have to make a decision. More importantly, as far as I'm concerned, Olivia's cool with me picking obscure bookstores to go to. And so our crew had a lot of fun going to a couple of bookstores, and we found one in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania that was absolutely epic. And we had a really good time exploring that. So Olivia, welcome to the Be Unbound podcast. It's fun to have you on the program.
Thank you. So glad to be here today.
So Olivia, there's lots of fun things we talk about, and we might get around to talking about books because we could go a long time with that. But as we were discussing this earlier, we wanted to kind of hit a topic that it makes sense to us. We spend a lot of time thinking about it, talking about it. But when we talk to our students, and honestly, when we talk to other folks in other industries and businesses and various places, it's not always immediately apparent. So in Unbound, we think about how we organize an organization, any organization, but a company, but also other teams and work teams and project teams and things like that. We think in terms of three kind of points. We talk about a vision point, which is somebody who has to be, we sometimes refer to as the chief wringable neck. So the person that is figuring out what has to be done, making sure everybody knows what has to be done, and is also kind of watching for both new opportunities and threats coming. We talk about the storytelling group, and those are the sales and marketing folks that tell everybody the story. sometimes internally and externally. But then there's a third group, and that group is the people that actually does the work. Now, I don't mean the other people aren't working. I mean that these are the people that actually make sure that all the stories we're telling actually get done. The vision gets checked for accuracy, and we call those the operations people. And Olivia, you're kind of the epitome and our poster child for operations. So tell us a little bit about how you wound up as an operations superstar for Unbound.
Well, first of all, that's a very generous description. But yeah, honestly, it was really through just learning about those 3 points of what we call the team triangle: the vision, operations, and storytelling. I think that I had always grown up with the conception that the leaders or the successful people in the world fell into kind of a broad vision storytelling category. They were the people up on stage, they were the charismatic leaders, they were the ones setting a vision and coming up with the new ideas. And so as I was growing up for a lot of my life, I kind of had this thought that those were the skills I needed to develop in order to make an impact on the world. And when I came into touch with the team triangle and the concepts you just talked about, and I learned that there was this third category of people that was supposedly helpful, it kind of rocked my world, honestly. I had no idea that organization and coordination and spreadsheets and all of that were things that a lot of people didn't know how to do or hated doing, or were even skills that were worthwhile and valuable in the workforce. And so through that, I then was able to start honing those skills, eventually got hired with Unbound, have been able to grow and continue to learn in those capacities here. And that's ultimately kind of the path that's brought me to where I'm at today.
I think there's something you said there that's worth kind of going back and looking at. You said that I thought that the people that were leaders that made an impact, and you kind of you described a vision person, but one who comes almost from more storytelling or marketing sales type standpoint. And one of the things that we've found is when we talk to people, there's a lot of coolness to being an entrepreneur. And so everybody kind of thinks if I'm going to do business, I need to do it as an entrepreneur. And we're big fans of entrepreneurs. And so certainly that's a great place to be. And if you have entrepreneurial gifts, that's fantastic. And they play a really important role in lots of places. But I have come to learn that being entrepreneurial or being an entrepreneur, I think probably more the singular makes more sense. Being an entrepreneur sort of designates a special kind of business. And that's a business where you're developing something that's brand new. It has some risk attached to it, not necessarily always colossally high risk, but it means blazing new territory. And so those people tend to be certainly vision people, but sometimes they're a little bit more on the storytelling side in terms of they have to raise capital and all those kinds of things. But here's the part that is really important for our audience to hear and to understand. And that is most businesses are not those kinds of businesses. Most businesses are actually service type businesses or businesses that are iterating on an already established idea, or they're filling a niche where the market makes sense, but they just need a new way of doing it. And not only do they need operations people in both of those things, so both entrepreneurs need operations people and the other kinds of businesses need that, but that operations folks make excellent overall leaders and vision people for those organizations, especially organizations that need somebody to maintain a market position or to optimize something that's going really well. So that's an important thing to note that people that have Olivia's skills have loads of opportunities, not only in any organization, but also at the top of those organizations. But let's go back, Olivia, and talk a little bit about, when we say operations, I think that internally makes some sense to us, but kind of break that down into sort of the main categories that you see are operational type categories for any kind of team or company.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Operations and logistics, I kind of use those synonymously, but really, I view operations as just the person who comes along and coordinates anything. So you may be the project manager who is leading a team and is coordinating kind of step by step. Hey, we're going to do this, and then we need to accomplish this, and then we need to accomplish that by these deadlines in order for the project to move forwards. Or you might be someone who's more in the middle or on the lower ranks of an organization, and you're just saying, hey, I was handed this project. How can I get this done in the most effective way possible? So either way, you're kind of coming alongside the vision of the company, whether you yourself are setting that vision or you have a visionary who's setting it for you. And you're just coming along to make sure that things go forward as smoothly and efficiently as possible. At least that's how I would view it.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. So thinking back to like how a company works, you tend to in all companies and organizations, including some of those service-based ones before,
Mhm.
you generally have somebody, and this is a good thing to have, by the way. So this is an endorsement. You have a person or persons who are coming up with new ideas. And they're saying, oh, look, the market's changing and we need to change with it. Or look, there's a new opportunity over there. Or, the technology we have is outdated. We need to implement some new technology. Or if we did things differently, I think we'd get some returns on margin or we get some returns on whatever it is that we're looking for. And so there's those people, and there's people that they, you know, at their worst kind of iteration of that, they'll break things just to do something, right? And so there's
Right.
some aspect of that. But every company needs people that can sort of see the icebergs ahead and steer a new course. But those people are almost always in opposition to the operations people. And so, in kind of a classical situation, you have some innovator that comes in and says, "We got to do everything all different." And you have operations people that say, "I don't want to hear you say that because I just spent 10 years or 5 years or 18 months or 6 months optimizing this process. And now you got to break it all. What are you talking about?" So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that you have people that come in and they say, "We should do this." And the operations people are like, "Is that person smoking? Like, there's no way that we can afford that. There's no way that that'll work. There's no way those things will go together." And so they tend to say, "You're crazy. That's not going to happen." Like, that's just welcome to planet Earth. The reality is here. Now, that's not a bad thing. Like, we need operations people to do that. But Olivia, you have an extraordinary talent where you have a logical side and a process oriented side that's really good at all the things you just mentioned. But there's an artistic side. And what I mean by that is like that's the science, there's sort of a science and art. There's an art and an intuitive side where you have to sense where things are going and then how much of your operations, opinion to insert without killing an idea. So talk about that a little bit, because I think that's the part that is the classic sort of, entrepreneur runs into reality type of thing. And yet you're somebody who is absolutely essential to every new idea we've ever done at Unbound. But you're never the person that's killing new ideas. So how tell us about that balance. How does that work?
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to what you were saying in terms of, the vision people seeing those icebergs and then coming back and saying, hey, we need to switch everything up. It's not that vision and operations are fundamentally opposed. And I think you may have used the phrase block or roadblock to say that, which is the common conception when it comes to these kind of projects, because it's a little scary as an operations person when the vision or the storytelling marketing people come back and they say, hey, there's this problem and we need to change everything, or we need to change this really big thing that feels like everything. And so I think the first kind of roadblock is just getting over that hurdle of realizing if you're on a team together, ultimately you need to be working towards the same vision or the team is going to fall apart. And so the operations job then is not to squash every single new idea that comes along. It's to trust the vision people enough to say, I understand that you are looking ahead and you're seeing these things and you have a concern about this, or you're excited about this, or we need to pivot in this way. But then it's taking that next step to actually listen to what's going on underneath of that, what the real problem is, what the real encouragement or motivation is, and figuring out how you can mesh that with reality, not how you can use reality as a roadblock or a hammer to say, sorry, I can't do this because of budget or project plan or whatever other red tape you might throw in there.
Now I have some ability to talk with authority on this side because I'm frequently the vision person on the other side that Olivia is saying, have we thought about this? But the have we thought about this is critical because
Mhm.
I can tell you from experience that I don't ever remember Olivia in any meeting saying, we can't do that. Or what are you thinking? Let alone, what are you smoking? But instead, Olivia does something else and she asks questions. And so it's normally kind of like, let me and there's two phases of questions here. And Olivia, I'd like you to kind of comment on this a little bit. But in my experience, you ask a first set of questions, which is clarifying.
Mhm.
So when Olivia does react to something, it's after she's asked 3 or 4 clarifying questions, so she knows exactly how crazy the idea is that I'm proposing. And then the second is always a set of questions that are coming out of her operational background that tend to do an excellent job of exposing the weakness of the crazy idea that just got put on the table, which is precisely what needs to happen. So I don't know, Olivia, tell me a little bit about, was that a natural talent? Is that something that you learned, or how did you come across that set of skills?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a super solid answer here. I think that question asking is something that, on the one hand, is naturally ingrained into people, but on the other hand, is also a skill that needs to be developed. And so the listening portion of that is something that I've worked on to develop over the years, because you can ask all of the questions that you want. But ultimately, if you just come in with a list of 5 questions and don't pivot or calibrate those based on the responses that you're getting, you're not going to get anywhere. So that's where kind of the clarifying question comes in. It can be really easy to hear a new idea as an operations person, automatically assume the worst, and then start thinking up reasons why you can't accomplish whatever that high, scary vision idea is. And so if you can clarify and get it down to, hey, no, we're not looking at this big thing. We're actually looking at these 3 small changes. It's a lot easier to kind of move into that next phase of, okay, now what? And then once you're there, again, I've worked in operations in a lot of capacities, not low in a company hierarchy, as in I don't have a say or I don't have a voice or I can't impact the solution. But the leadership roles that I've been in thus far have been smaller and continue to grow. Like, I started in the company young, and I'm still really young, but I've been here a couple of years now. And so asking questions can sometimes be a way to soften logistical blows, if we want to call them that, as opposed to saying, no, we can't do this or we must change this. Instead, moving on from those clarifying questions to the actual logistical questions can help other people see, oh yeah, there might be a small problem with this, or we should reconsider exactly how to do this. So those are my initial thoughts based on what you said.
Yeah, I think those are good thoughts. And it might be fun to kind of go through a little bit. So we're in the middle of this. And so maybe we'll actually pull the veil back and sort of walk through some of the things we've done. So Unbound runs 3 live events typically in a year. And for many, many years since our inception, we've wanted to add a 4th. And
Mhm.
so this year we're adding a 4th. It was kind of a volume situation for us until we could get all the financial ducks in a row. And so we're able to do that. We're able to do it without raising the price of the program. And so we have a 4th event. So first of all, Olivia, when I say 4th event, give me some idea of, like, when I say 4th event, what does that mean? So
Oh my, that's an excellent question. So right now we have 3 events in the Ascend program: Apex, Basecamp, and Capstone. And each of those is a large endeavor from an operations perspective. Nothing crazy, scary. I've done it several years now, and so they're actually quite fun and one of the best parts of my job. But they do require several months in advance of the event, booking a venue and getting the registrations out and making sure you have a list of all of the student names and allergies and everything else you could possibly want to know. It's creating name tags and making schedules and planning content and just all sorts of other things. If the word logistics has anything to do with it, it's probably involved in the event somewhere. So yes, this 4th event is no small project, but it's also something I'm very excited for and passionate about, like the rest of the company.
So, and we are passionate about this, but first of all, just on the negative side, I hope you heard in that when we say 4th event, Olivia says my job just became 25% more difficult. And Olivia won't tell you this, but I will tell you that we didn't increase her salary 25%. We probably should, but we didn't. And so basically, hey, Olivia, you're going to be working the same job you were before, kind of the same pay, and we're going to make 25% more complicated for you to do what you're doing.
Right.
And so I think if you're listening, hear first that this is not a small ask. This is a lot of stuff going on. So I think the initial reaction for most normal people would be like, let me get this straight. We're doing fine with 3 events. And now I've got a 4th event that we have to add. And it's going to make my job 25% more difficult. And it has all these risks attached to it and all these kinds of things. And that's all true. So the first thing to just note is that Olivia, this is not for the podcast, Olivia had the same attitude of being excited about this event from the beginning.
Mhm.
But what are some of the problems you see? We say 4th event. What were some of the first problems that struck your mind, Olivia? Is like, hey, these are concerns that we're going to have to figure out.
Mhm. Well, to be fair, we started discussing a 4th event several years ago. And at that point, some of the problems were we don't have the volume that we need to make this feasible. We would have to raise the price exponentially in order to make this work. We don't have the personnel needed to make this happen. Like, there were all sorts of logistical problems that needed to come up to postpone the project for a few years. And I know this is kind of a tangent, but I think that's worth noting from an operations perspective too. Sometimes saying no in the moment is not a hard no forever. Instead, it's a, hey, we need to overcome these before we can move forward. And that's a little bit of what we did here. When it comes to specific problems for the 4th event, I don't know that I have a ton off the top of my head right now. We've had a whole series of meetings where we've been working on the name and the content and basic things like that. My main roles so far have been searching for venues and making sure that we can get a place large enough for the dates that we want and need. So those are kind of the initial steps. I don't know that I have a lot to say in terms of actual problems yet at this point. If you have ideas, go for it.
Well, I think you identified it at the beginning, which was, and so let's like roll back a couple of years.
Mhm.
So being on the other side of this, I'm like, we need to have a 4th event. We need to have something in every quarter. And look how cool this would be and how much fun it would be and all the things we could do. And I can immediately jump to all the things that are correct.
Mhm.
And I would say that most of those, not all of them, most of those are indeed advantages. But the operations team with Olivia said, okay, I agree. Those are all really good things, but here's some reality. This is what would have to happen. This is how we'd have to do it. And these are just, the parameters that we're working in. This is what would, and it wasn't, we can't do the event. It was like, in order to do the event, you heard Olivia say that in order for this to be possible, we would have to do this. In this case, raise the price exponentially. Is that a good idea? And the answer was, no, it was a really terrible idea to raise the price. But it wasn't we can't do this. You're crazy. That's a dumb idea. What are you thinking? It was, okay, yeah, I love this idea. This is a great idea, but here's the reality we have to deal with. Okay, so we come back to it, and now everybody's on board. So we're all going to do this event. And so we've now solved some of our major issues. And so then what were some of the, we had that first meeting, Olivia. What were some of the first questions you were asking in terms of how to do this? What were sort of the big categories that you were thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective or from the operations perspective, the key things that I needed in order to plan an event were dates and a location and a general feel or theme or content outline for the event. So I knew, do we need a place with a conference room? Do we need a place with lots of outdoor space? Do we need a place with a big gymnasium or something like that so we can do projects in a large space together? All of those things impact the constraints that we have to operate under in order to plan the event. So we use this phrase a lot in Unbound, scarcity leads to creativity, which it's simply just saying that once we know the confines that we're working under, we're able to make better decisions based on what we have to work with. And so a lot of my initial questions then were, what are the parameters that we have for this event? And then how can we make the most successful event possible using the necessity that we have or the things that we need in order to make it work well? So that's where some of my initial questions were stemming from.
So we did not say this in the event, and so let's make sure that we know this is fiction here. But let's say that I came up with a brainstorm. I said, you know what, Olivia, would be really cool is that we could be unbound from gravity. And so building on some of our recent base camp things that happened, we decided that one of the things we're going to do for project-based education is at this fourth event, we're going to have everybody build jetpacks. So that would be the thing that we're going to do. Now, I'm deliberately being outlandish, but, suspend disbelief for a second, Olivia. And if I said that to you, what is your, and I've not proposed jetpacks, but I've proposed things that are probably equally as illogical when it comes to reality. And so what is your first thing that happens if I would say, hey, we're going to build jetpacks at this fourth event? What do you say next?
That's a great question. I mean, first internal thing that happens is I definitely take a deep breath. So we need to start there.
We knew that happened, David. We knew that was the case, but just want y'all to know in the audience, this first time Olivia's admitted taking the deep breath when she's faced with one of my ridiculous ideas. So, okay, continue.
No,
Olivia.
but
That's great.
After that point, I mean, first of all, I might steal a line from Capstone, which is our fourth event or third event, which is tell me more about that. Basically, flesh out the idea. What exactly are you thinking? What is the purpose here? And then I might ask some more question in terms of why are you interested in jetpacks? Is it simply wanting a project for our students to complete? Because I can think of lots of other projects for our students to complete. Is it wanting something big and grandiose that you could put in a YouTube video and make us look really cool? I don't have a lot of great ideas that are big and grandiose, but I know other people who do. And so some of those might be my initial questions. That's kind of the clarifying section. Once we get through that, if we're still super set on jetpacks and jetpacks is the thing we want to do, I might ask more logistical questions. So for instance, Becky is our event nurse. Jonathan and Becky are good friends. I might ask a question like, what does Becky think of this idea? Have you run this idea past Becky? And that might be enough to shut the idea down right there, and I don't even have to do it.
That was very well done, Olivia. So we're chuckling because the jetpack idea, and just so y'all know, and Becky, when you're listening to this, we know you won't approve of jetpacks. And so return to the fact that this is fantasy and we're not operating seriously.
Sorry, students, we are probably not actually doing jetpacks.
Yeah, that's right. At least not initially. It may be one of those ideas we have to wait till later, right, Olivia? So, and I want to sort of say something that's really important here. Olivia could say, that's a dumb idea. We shouldn't do that. And honestly, if Olivia said that, we would all put a screeching brakes on and be like, we should probably not do this idea. So I don't want you to think that this is a situation where Olivia's trying to be careful because she's afraid of saying no. But I also want people to hear because I think Olivia did a really great job with that, that the fundamental truth of this idea is it's a dumb idea. right? I mean, it's unsafe. It's got liability problems. It's expensive. There's no technology that works. I mean, like we can just go on and on. So you'd be totally in your rights, and it would be totally logical, and it would be responsible for you to say, "Oh, this is a really dumb idea." But if you were listening, think about how that was phrased, because this is what actually happens. In my experience, Olivia does this. It wasn't, that's a stupid idea. It was what are you trying to achieve here? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you looking for a project for students to do? Are you looking for a splashy event? In other words, those clarifying questions do something really important. Often, good ideas come out of dumb ideas. And I don't mean that that's justifiable to have a really stupid idea, but sometimes when you throw something out and you go, what if we could do jetpacks? The point is nobody really believes we're doing jetpacks. It's just, it gives us a perspective change. It kind of gives us a little bit of creativity. And then when somebody says, well, why would we do that? All of a sudden that creativity starts to create that scarcity, which breeds that creativity where you say, okay, well, what am I trying to accomplish? And that clarity, you go, oh, well, actually what we really want to do is we want to do X. And now we can work on something, and it kind of comes down. So that's the first thing that I just want people to notice, that those questions end up enhancing creativity and double down on us reaching a good goal without kind of killing the whole thing. And then it's worth noting that in the process, nobody's ego gets bruised, right? Now, I would like to think that my ego would not get bruised if Olivia would say that's a dumb idea, because indeed it was a dumb idea. I'd be smart enough to realize it. But in this case, there's never that kind of confrontation. She's just asking, hey, cool, I'm willing to go along with this, but like, what are you trying to accomplish so I can help you more? And so, well, I'm really trying to accomplish this. And it has some adjustments. And then the last one was really brilliant, Olivia, because here we got Olivia who's took a deep breath and said, this is really dumb. And so I can see a few things, and she's taking one last shot at not having to have a full on confrontation. Not that she's scared of the confrontation, to say, I wonder if we can think about this differently. Have you talked to Becky? And I think you said, Olivia, knowing full well that Becky's going to be like, you're out of your mind, and I'm not coming to that event, in which case we'd say, we're out of our mind. We're not doing that event. And again, this is a reality for people. People love their own ideas better. And so when Olivia asks a question like that, the person on the other end, perhaps me, goes, oh yeah, Becky's going to hate this. And so we're going to have to do something different, right? But now it's not like, oh, Olivia, she's such a killjoy. The operations people, they're full of red tape. They're always squashing the good ideas. That never entered into the process. Instead, our operations people were the people that helped us make a good idea and get us to the good point. And then we finally decided it was a bad idea. It wasn't the operations people who decided it was a bad idea. We're like, oh yeah, that probably doesn't work. But that was a good question. What we really want to accomplish is a big splash for a YouTube video. What's a better way to do that? And it puts us on a new path. So I think that those things are worth noting, certainly as a commendation of the way Olivia operates. But if you're in an operations sector, if you're the kind of person who thinks and acts like Olivia, these are absolutely excellent points to understand and how you interact with the rest of your organization. So,
well, and another piece of that I'm just noticing from like the descriptions that you guys are talking about, especially in this hypothetical dynamic that you guys have just set up here, is that there's a lot of trust on both ends of that interaction, where Olivia, you are trusting the fact that like Jonathan does in fact have good vision, and like the people who are like putting out the ideas like have a vision that is worth actually considering. It is not just something to say that's not unrealistic, let's just push that to the side because they're being ridiculous. And then the vision people also have the trust in the operations to know that, hey, even if they do potentially like poke holes in that idea, like that's not personal to me. And also that's something that ultimately I know is going to be for the better of the organization.
I was just going to say that tangents off of something that Jonathan said too, in terms of the ego of the vision people and not using ego in even a bad term. Operations people need vision people just as much as vision people need operations people. And Jonathan, you've done a lot of talking up of the operations people in this podcast, which I really appreciate. But I also think it's worth noting that if an operations person doesn't have a vision person, we're just going to keep spiraling down on the same ideas. And we can systematize and organize and coordinate all day and all night if we want to and never get anywhere. And so I think that's an important thing to note in terms of the asking questions as well. It's not so much that we're not saying no because we can't say no. It's because we want to say yes. And the more that we can say yes to good ideas and channel things that direction, the more ideas the vision people are going to spin out and the more ideas we can reach because there's just a larger pool of ideas to work with to start. So I think that's worth noting in this conversation as well.
Yeah, that's a good observation, Olivia. So, David, you're interesting. You ride the rail a little bit here. You work in the storytelling aspect of the company, doing some marketing and things like that. And of course, this podcast. And yet, you do a lot of operation stuff, not the least of which is often the person in charge of the sound systems at all of our events, which is a very high end logistical job with tends to be a lot of pressure in it. But for both of you, then you can relate to this question. I just came back from an event last weekend, and it was a big event. It was very complicated, lots of stuff going on, and there was a professional sound team there. And, one of the things you notice with these guys is that, and this happened to me, I stood up to do my presentation and tried to advance the slide and it didn't work. And so I said without thinking, it's like, and I started making my point. I said, oh, no, the first problem is to figure out why these slides don't advance. And then I looked down and the clicker that advances the slides was turned off. And so I turned it back on. Okay. Now here's what happened. In that moment, I looked to the left where the sound guys were, and the implication was, what'd y'all do to mess this up? And then I realized what happened. So I immediately came back to the microphone and I said, hey, just so y'all know, the thing was not turned on, which was totally my fault. And the slides are working perfectly. These guys have set it all up right. And it was my stupidity to not turn this thing on. Okay. Now, the reason I did that, David, is because I've seen this happen on your side. And so operations people and sound guys tend to be folks that are in the background. And so they're doing a lot of work. And then when they've come into the foreground, it's because somebody didn't have a flight that didn't get purchased, or the microphone squeals, or the microphone doesn't come on, or somebody finds out they don't have a hotel room. In other words, the publicity often comes with a failure. So I want you to reverse it a little bit and say, what are the things that are helpful for people that are not operations folks to recognize? Because neither of you are limelight seeking people, although David's Instagram recently has belied that. So no, but I mean, neither of you are people that are looking to be. I've seen both of you on stage and you're excellent speakers and you're excellent on stage, but that's not a primary motivation for you. But what is some good ways that, if you're not an operations person, you can recognize people when things are working, not when just things go wrong?
The thing is that, at least in my experience with having done sound for a lot of speakers who range from very appreciative of what I do to pretty much just only recognizing me if something ends up going wrong. Really just for one thing, just acknowledging the fact that we are there to support and facilitate what the person on the stage, and what, I guess in this case, the vision person is wanting to do. And so, there might be restrictions, in the sound example, I might not have the exact kind of microphone that somebody wants to use. And so then we have to do a lot of troubleshooting to figure out what is the best way to go about making sure that they're still audible, but they are still able to be comfortable in their presentation, because that's going to benefit everyone in the situation. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot of the time, it's really just a matter of recognizing that while those of us who are in the background are, not the limelight people, at the end of the day, that is our job, is to support you and what you're doing. And the more that you are able to work with us, the better that you are going to end up having an experience in whatever vision that you are trying to accomplish. And that's when that relationship is good, when I'm able to have kind of that rapport with Jonathan, where as soon as we recognize that there's some sort of AV problem, we can just kind of work through it there, and we know that it's all good, and we can just go from there, and nobody's upset about anything. And so when you're able to have that relationship there where problems can get solved, well, it makes it really.
I'd agree with all of that. And I'll kind of break it down almost into 3 different points. One is simply take ownership for things. So Jonathan, you had a great example of, you realized the clicker wasn't on and you immediately said, this is not the tech guy's fault. It just needed to be turned on. We're good now. The more that people are willing to do that, I'm happy to take ownership of the things that I'm responsible for. And I end up taking ownership of some things that I'm not always directly responsible for. But if it's clearly your fault and you're able to just say, I understand what messed up here, let's move on towards problem solving, operations people are so much happier. So there's that. Secondly, I would say, a thank you is always appreciated. If you see an operations person doing something in the background, you can quietly recognize that. And sometimes we're not very good at taking compliments, but it's something I'm working to grow in. And I think that all operations people should. And then thirdly, like you said, David, just enjoy the event, enjoy the vision of the event, support whatever it is that's going on. And so because I work mostly in events, it's just have a good time, participate in sessions, build relationships, and accomplish the objectives that we're looking for in the first place. And that's probably the biggest thing of just coming alongside that vision as well.
And I'd like just to point out that the fact that Olivia is on another level of operational thinking here, where she was able to take all of the points that I said in a very scattered fashion and was able to break them down into three very clear, distinct, and actionable points for those of you who are listening. So thank you, Olivia.
So it's not
Anytime.
often that David gets eclipsed as chief summarizer on the podcast, but Olivia would certainly be one to be able to do that. So, well, I hope this is helpful for those of you listening. Olivia and David, thanks for your input and your insight on this topic. When you were kind of thinking about what you want to do in life, and you said, I thought I had to be this kind of entrepreneurial type of person, were you thinking in terms of a job or a kind of field? And I know that's a leading question, but you and I discussed this a little bit offline. And so tell me a little bit about how that thinking was and how it changed as you went through. Because I think that might illustrate the point I was going to make any.
Really, I wasn't thinking in terms of job or field. In a lot of ways, I was thinking in terms of personality or just skills and giftings in general. And that flopped pretty miserably. I'm gifted in a lot of ways. I'm not gifted in a lot of other ways. And so I can work to grow things like public speaking or relational, emotional intelligence, that sort of thing. But it is always going to be more difficult for me than organizing ideas or a spreadsheet or a project plan. And so, yes, I was thinking about it in terms of job and field to an extent, in terms of where do I want my life to go? What fields do I need to grow? But honestly, a lot of it just came down to looking at who I was as a person and being dissatisfied in that, which was not a good place to be.
Thanks. I think if you're listening to this, I just want people to hear that often we think about it in terms of, Olivia talked about personality, and then people think often in terms of jobs. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be
Right.
something. And it's not that those things are bad. It's just I recognize that every one of those things, like name any career field out there, has an operations component to it. And while certainly it's industry specific and there's certain skills that you need to know, for example, Olivia's really good at putting on live events. David knows how to run a really complicated soundboard. There's also some transferable stuff there where that kind of skill is necessary in all places. And so if you're listening, I hope that this helps if you've got that kind of skill set to kind of recognize that. And then I just want to finish with Olivia came in as an intern, as a cabinet member, doing some different things, and then did less as she started working had less responsibility. She started working with us. And now is basically, she's part of our leadership team. She's got a bit large swath of responsibility. And these are skills that, yes, are in support of perhaps innovation company or something like that, but are skills that will stand on their own to run a company as well. So there's not a cap here. It's not like, well, the vision people are the top and then the other people are below it. It's that this is one of the routes to that vision. That vision people that come from operations will see things a little differently than vision people that come from storytelling side necessarily. But that there's a set of skills here that really doesn't have an upper limit that, is essential for all companies, innovative or not. But then also stands alone, especially for companies that need that steady organizational system building, margin increasing type of skill set. So I think people sort of see past that when they're looking for something more specific and they don't realize a broad set of skills that maybe they're quite gifted in. Olivia, thanks for joining us and thanks for lending your insight. And it's also a good opportunity to tell you thanks for all the work that you do for Unbound. David, also thanks for the insight we talked about David doing all the sound stuff, which he's doing for this podcast. So while he's talking about it, he's also simultaneously doing it. So we appreciate that as well. Thanks for joining us for a conversation today.
Absolutely. So glad to be here with you guys.
All right. Well, that was a lot of fun, and I really appreciated being able to highlight somebody who is often, as we talked about, more in a behind-the-scenes role and is not often able to share a lot of the really valuable wisdom that they're able to gain. But yeah, Olivia is absolutely somebody who is really enjoyable to have really interesting conversations with and has a lot of really valuable experience and insight that I don't think that she gets to share to a wider audience nearly enough. So it was really cool to be able to have her on.
Yeah, we couldn't do this when she was on because she wouldn't allow it, but we can brag about her now that she's off and she can't complain about it. So Olivia is an exceptional person. And, lots of times people who do operations work are really good at that and they don't necessarily transfer other things. And that's totally fine. That's true. I certainly am good at certain things and I don't transfer to operations work very well. But Olivia's not that way. Olivia's actually quite excellent on stage. She's a premier speaker for us. She doesn't do it often, but when she does, she's just absolutely fantastic. And she's just one of those people that is quietly competent at everything that she does. And not just competent incompetent, but often an expert at what she does. But it's almost like if Olivia says you can do it, you know that it'll be done with above average results. And the things that she says that she can do is actually quite wider than you would expect. And as we talked about in the intro, she also has a fantastic sense of humor. She's a lot of fun, and nothing ever gets her stressed out. In fact, one of my kind of like doomsday triggers is if I see Olivia panicked, I'm just quitting right then, because if we've reached that point, whatever apocalypse is about to happen soon.
Oh yeah, there's been so many
never even
moments.
seen her slightly stressed.
There's been so many moments for both of us, I think, where there have been things where we have been viewing them and we're like, oh my gosh, how in the world are we going to deal with this? This is a really big problem. And Olivia is able to be extremely level-headed and go, okay, this like next steps, boom, boom, boom. And so I think a part of the operational skill that she has that I don't think we quite got to highlight enough in the episode there was that she isn't just good at organizing logistics ahead of time. She is also very excellent at figuring out logistics when things go wrong in the moment and everybody is panicking. And that is, I think, an even more impressive skill in my opinion.
Yeah. So actually, the indicator for me is you heard her say, I take a deep breath. And so she does mentally most of the time. But if you do see Olivia go, and then answer, you're like, oh man, we're really close to Armageddon. Like we're brushing up against it right here. So, and that happens very rarely. But yeah, Olivia's unruffled no matter what happens. Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Olivia. I hope more importantly than that is that you were able to sort of get a different perspective on work that's available. My experience across multiple companies and sectors is that every organization has an operations side. And few people who work in operations really understand that in that kind of broad sense. They tend to think this is my job, and I think very specifically that this is the job I'm doing. And they sometimes fail to understand that what they're doing is a set of skills that can transfer across a wide variety of areas. And I hope that this opened your eyes to that possibility and allows you to think about it in a slightly different way. At heart, that's what we do at Unbound. We try to open your eyes to possibilities and to see something from a new perspective. And we do that through our programs, certainly. And we've talked here before about Navigate, our decision-making course that's available to young adults, especially high school students, and our high school programs, Equip, Explore, and Declare, and our post-high school program where we specifically train young adults to thrive, which we do across all these, but the Ascend is kind of our flagship for that, our Ascend program. We also publish some books. And so we have two books that are relevant here, the Personal Triangle and the Team Triangle. And both of these deal specifically with these subjects. We talk about how you take the things that we're discussed here, operations, storytelling, and vision, and that how they relate to some personality traits. Most people either create people, coordinate people, or connect people, and how all three of those personality traits operate in all three areas of the triangle. And so if you are interested in that, you can go to beunbound.us and you can search there and you can find those books. And you also know that we do some, in addition to Unbound work, we do some speaking on these subjects, sometimes in a business capacity. We do some business consulting work and some leadership training for groups and organizations around these ideas. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, go to beunbound.us. If you're interested in the consulting side, just contact us and we'll work out a custom solution. But if you're interested in the books, these are short books. They're not super long, but you can read them in 20, 30 minutes, but they're appropriate for anything from adults to teens to kind of illustrate these principles in a quick, fast way that should be fun and easy to understand. So, David, anything else before we wrap up?
I was just going to mention the books are phenomenally illustrated by an Unbound alumni, worth noting.
Who was actually on this show. So Sarah Shaw, if you want to go back and look, was on one of our episodes, the CEO and founder of Inclivity, absolutely awesome graphic designer and artist, and she illustrated it. And the illustrations, as the person that wrote most of the text, the illustrations make the book. I think I can say that with with great confidence. So, well, thank you so much for your time today. We'll look forward to bringing you some more folks from outside our staff as we go forward. But for the rest of the day, until we see you next time, be Unbound.